In today's video, I'm going to be talking about this, and this is a new government consultation on the use of drones in the UK. Now, if you are a UK commercial operator or you are just a UK hobbyist, this is something you need to take note of. This consultation closes on the 17th of September 2018, so time is running out for you to have your say on how the government want to change the use of drones in our country. Now, this consultation specifically talks about the use of police powers, possible introduction of fines, and around information services. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this later on in this video. However, if you do not want to watch that, there is a link to this document in the description to this video. It is 97 pages long. I strongly suggest you download it, read it. There is also a link to the feedback where you can give the government your say on what you think about the new powers they are proposing. I strongly suggest every single drone user in the UK takes the time to read this document and give the government their feedback, because there is some pretty serious stuff in here which could have dramatic changes to how you fly in the UK. Things like on-the-spot fines for flying in the wrong places, things like police powers to seize your equipment. Now, whilst we all support better, safer use of drones, we also know that there are many powers the police already have in the UK, and do they really need any additional ones to deal with people who are not flying in a safe and legal manner? Now, I'm going to move on and talk about a few things in this video. If you don't want to continue to watch, please download this document, please read it and click on the feedback form to the government and have your say, because after 11:45 PM on the 17th of September, this consultation will close and they will base the legislation and laws on what information we have given them. If we don't feed back, they don't know how we feel. Okay, in this bit of the video, I want to talk about certain aspects of this new proposal that the government have. Now, earlier in 2018, there were some new regulations brought in around the use of drones in the UK. Now, that was they closed the limit on the 400-foot altitude requirement. They put a new 1 kilometre flight restriction in place around airports, and they also put into the ANO and law the requirement for registration of drones over 250 grams and a new competency test for pilots as well. Now, these last two don't actually come into play until the end of 2019. However, they have been put into law and they are going to happen. However, there is currently a consultation taking place on the use, restriction and enforcement of drones in the UK. And as I have already said a number of times, it closes at 11:45 PM on the 17th of September 2018. So time is running out on this one. Now, the document itself is called Taking Flight, the Future of Drones in the UK. It is a very large document. It is 97 pages in total. However, I strongly suggest you do download it and read it. I'm going to talk about a few aspects of this document that I'm interested in and specifically concern me, really. And those three are the introduction of a flight information and notification service, new police powers to find, seize and prosecute, as well as on-the-spot fixed penalty fines of up to £300. None of this is actually even at full proposal stage yet. They are literally within the consultation asking us what our opinion is, and now is the time to give your opinion, because if you don't do it before it closes, they will decide on these rules based on what information they've had already. Okay, the first thing they're talking about is an introduction of a flight information notification service, and the basics from this is the introduction of a system that allows users, drone users, and the public, and I'll come on to that a bit more in a minute, to have real-time flight information via traffic management. And they're talking about, think about the NATS app if you've ever used it, but having an app which shows you in real time what aircraft are around you, what drones are flying around you, and what's going on in that airspace. That might be by an app, a website to view that real-time data. They haven't decided yet if it would be one provider like NATS or maybe more than one provider, so companies. And this system would give you notification of other airspace users. So it means you could be flying and you'd get notified if a plane comes nearby. However, it is also designed to give others notification of where you're flying. And they go on to talk about the requirement to notify of a flight in advance for certain users. Now, they discuss about making pilots log their flights with this system in advance before flying. The part that worries me is they talk about certain users and they don't go any further on than that. And certain users, well, who is that? For me, I have a horrible feeling that's going to end up being commercial operators, PFCOs like myself. You are going to end up having to tell them you are going to fly in advance. Now, they do talk about what is feasible. Would you be able to tell them up to 5 days in advance? Should you be required to tell them before every single flight? If you haven't told them, would you be allowed to fly? Because they do talk about saying, no, if you haven't notified, you cannot fly. Now, as I've said, this is a consultation. So now is the time to give your feedback on this. My concern with this is that they are looking to introduce this flight notification system, which sounds fantastic. It really does. However, there are some real concerns around making this available for the whole public to see, because are they going to allow everyone to see where every flight is taking place? So if you're flying a private job on a private property, will the public have access to see, oh, there's a guy flying a drone over there, I want to go and have a look? You know, there are direct privacy concerns around this stuff. Will my clients want to know that? You know, will my clients be happy to know that people know that there's a drone flying on their property? There are many, many reasons people want to keep things like this private, you know. So I do have some large concerns. You know, am I going to have to register every flight in advance? You know, that's not always possible. You know, I don't always have phone coverage. I don't always have the ability. Sometimes my device is offline for varying reasons. Things change. What happens if the flight plan changes? What happens if the location changes because the weather's bad, the wind's high? It changes, the weather drops off, the time changes. If you said you're going to fly at 3 o'clock and suddenly it's going to be 4 or 5, will you have to keep updating that? You know, there is a huge amount of concern around this, and what concerns me is they seem very, very keen on putting this in place. Very, very keen. So around this stuff, please do read the document in detail and have a look before you feedback and look what you think you feel would be the appropriate thing to do. Because for me, as a commercial operator, I have great concerns having a requirement to notify a flight in advance of 5 days. I think that is simply not possible, not realistic, I should say. Everything is possible. However, is it realistic to know that you're going to be flying in 5 days? The industry just isn't in that place yet. It really isn't. The next bit I want to talk about is specific legislation and new police powers. Now, currently the police have no specific powers around drones, so they have to use existing laws to deal with anybody who is behaving badly with them. Personally, I think the existing laws go far enough, and there is plenty of scope in the law to use that against people who are flying irresponsibly and illegally. However, what the government want to do is put specific powers, similar to Road Traffic Act and things like that, in the police's hands so they can use those powers against drone operators. And those powers are to ensure that drone operators are registered, they are compliant, they give the police the power to investigate who was flying a drone. It also will give them the power to prevent an offence being committed, and that's a bit of an interesting one, discourage repeat offending, and gather key evidence from drones suspected of misuse. Now, these powers go on to talk about some specific things and around, number one, drone operator registration. So the police will have the power to ensure that you are registered, you are competent, and you are using, if brought into play, the regulated flight information and notification system. Now, they've already written this flight information and notification system into this bit, which I find interesting. And whilst they do say if it's brought in to be used, I do find it interesting that they've already written it into this stage. The third bit is under Section 8 of the Prisons Act. They will give prison officers the same powers of police around this Drone Act. And I can understand why they'd want to do that, because we've all seen the news with stuff around drones and jails, and it's not good. So what they're saying is, if this legislation and these new police powers are given, they will give the prison officers those same powers. Okay, so if someone was flying directly outside a prison, that prison officer would have the same powers of the police with regards to this new legislation. And provide evidence relevant to other requirements for certain flying. And basically that means is the police would have the ability to ensure that you are a commercial operator. Now, going into this a little bit more detail, because there are some things in this that concern me. The police will have specific powers to obtain information such as your name and address of a drone operator, or the person to be believed to be in charge of the drone in specific circumstances. They will require a remote pilot to land the drone in specified circumstances. Now, this one concerns me slightly because as a commercial operator, I am the PIC. I am in charge of that drone. If a police officer comes up to me and says, land that now, and I don't feel it's safe to land, in my opinion, I am the more qualified person at that point. I am the PIC. I am the person who is totally irresponsible for that drone and the safety of the people around me, including that police officer, I might add. So I'd be very interested in what would happen if you were approached and said, land now, and you went, no, I don't feel it's safe a minute. Can you give me a little bit of time? That would be a very interesting conversation. These powers will also give the police the ability to enter or search premises with a warrant where there is reasonable suspicion. So if they reasonably suspect you have committed an offence, they will have the power to search your premises. I wonder how far they'd be willing to take that. Are we talking about flying above someone's house? They have the right to come into your home, or are we talking about flying over prisons? Again, a little bit open, and it makes you wonder how far we could go with that. Finally, and this is one of the ones that really begins to concern me, which is seize and retain a drone or its associated components where a constable reasonably believes of having been involved in an offence on entering and searching premises. Now, obviously, the police always have the right to take evidence, so that's around that. Now, what they talk about further on is about being able to access the information stored electronically on a seized drone if they believe there's an offence, and they will require any information stored in a drone to be handed over or provided to the police on request. So they're basically saying that they can ask you who you are. You must tell them. You must provide evidence that your drone is registered. You must provide evidence if you're a legal commercial operator, and you must show evidence that you are a competent person as per any future tests they introduce. Further to that, if they feel you have committed a drone-related offence, they can search your home, ask for your name and address, and seize equipment if they believe it is evidence. So it's pretty heavy stuff, to be fair. And the thing with this is specifically drone legislation. So this isn't going to be general legislation. It's specific for drones. Further to this, and it concerned me a little bit, this final little bit that they threw on the end. The Home Office intends to consult on extending stop and search powers. I've added the word powers because they are, to cover the possession of corrosive substances in a public place without good reason. Now, we all know why this is being brought in due to a number of attacks. However, we are working with the Home Office to consider the possibility of we are working with the Home Office to consider the possibility of including within that a similar power for the possession of a drone in certain circumstances. Now, this is a bit worrying what they're talking about here. Basically, they're saying if they believe you've got a drone, they will have the ability to stop and search you. Now, I don't know if they're talking about doing this at things like concerts, or anything like that, but it's an interesting bit they've tossed on the end, to say the least. So, really, on the police powers, that is that. There's a lot more to it than I've talked about there, and I am glossing over a ridiculous amount here, and this is mostly my ramblings, so please do read the document in its fullest to get your head around it, but that's what is being discussed. Now, thirdly, they're talking about fixed penalty notice, on-the-spot fines. So in addition to granting the police more powers in relation to new drone offences, the government is considering the use of fixed penalty notices, great, and giving the police powers to issue them in relation to certain drone offences, both offences under the ANO and new offences created by the Bill of Drones. So they're talking about being able to fine you on the spot. And they talk about a fixed fine as an alternative to a prosecution. They've looked at the Road Traffic Offences Act for 1998, and reasonable levels suggest penalties to range from £100 to £300. The exact penalty amount for different offences will not be specified in the bill, but in secondary legislation. The reason for that, I suspect, is so they can change it at any time without changing the whole bill. A fixed penalty notice would only be applicable to those over 18. So with regards to the fixed penalty notice, they're talking about the ability to fine you on the spot up to £300 proposed, or suggested, sorry, not proposed, if you're committing an offence of the ANO. So that, what worries me with that is it states police, in addition to providing police more powers, will councils have the powers to do this? That's my first big question. You know, we've got traffic wardens, we've got PCSOs, we've got all sorts out there. You know, police, okay. PCFs, oh, I can't even say it because I'm getting mixed up with PFCO, but you know what I mean. Community support officers, okay, yeah, I agree with that. However, there will be a very, very slippery road if this is introduced to councils, because we all know they contract stuff out. We all know that, you know, what various traffic wardens can be like. If they're going to allow people like traffic wardens or council wardens the ability to on the spot fine people, that really, really does put a shiver up my spine and gives me great concern, if I'm honest. The things they're talking about proposing to attach a fixed penalty notice to: not producing registration documents. So when the registration comes in November 2019, if you do not produce the document, then you could be fined. Not producing evidence a flight plan was submitted before flying. And there is that notification, FINS again. They're saying that they want to be able to fine you if you haven't logged your flight up front. Again, I have a large amount of concern that they definitely are going to bring an FINS in, and they have written legislation in to basically say, you know what, if you haven't told us up front, we can fine you £300 for doing it. And as a commercial operator, that is just simply not realistic. You cannot always preload everything in advance. There are circumstances with phone coverage. There are circumstances where things will stop you logging a flight online. So I do have a large amount of concern about that. Not producing evidence of any of the relevant permissions required. So basically, if you are a commercial operator and you haven't got PFCO, so you're saying you're flying commercially, however, you're not licensed to. Not complying with a police officer when instructed to land a drone. Again, that one I brought up earlier, it really does concern me. I am the PIC. I am a commercial operator. I am qualified. I am the person who is qualified to judge if it is safe to land. The police are not. I would be responsible for not only my safety, the public safety, and that police officer's safety as well. So that line really does worry me a little bit. It really does. Flying a drone without a valid acknowledgement of competency. Again, you haven't passed a future online test, which is to be brought in. Other offences under the ANO, which is, for instance, flying a drone within 50 metres of people, vehicles or buildings. So they're giving powers to be able to basically fine you for being silly under the rules and being a naughty boy. Now, there is 50% of me that thinks this is the best thing in the world, and there is 50% of me that thinks this is going to be a total nightmare. Honestly, again, the reason I'm talking about this is to give you guys the opportunity to read it. Take the time to read this document and give them your feedback on this. There's a varying number of other things they talk about where fixed penalty notices will be used as well, where they believe the offender did not intend to do it. And the reason they say did not intend to do it, because if they believed you intended to do it, there's probably other mechanisms and you'll end up in court. So, for instance, if you didn't intend to endanger another aircraft, but it happened, they could issue you with a fixed penalty notice. However, if you intentionally flew towards another aircraft, then you'd end up in court. That's the basics around this part. Cause persons occupying premises nuisance, annoying people, various basic things, property damage. So that's what they're talking about here. So FPNs would be used where the pilot hasn't intentionally done something to cause harm or annoy people or break the law, whereas if they feel you have actually broke the law intentionally, they're going to use other methods and you're probably going to land yourself in court. Finally, I'm going to finish this video with another video. There are a number of commercial operators and users in the UK who have spent a lot of time putting this video together to highlight this as much as possible. I'd like to thank them for sending it over to me to be able to share with you. There's also links in the description of this video with information on them and supporting the campaign again as well. And finally, as I've said 100 times, download it. Link is in the video. Read it, but don't only read it. Give the government your feedback. That link is also in the video. Have your say before the 17th of September 2018 at 11:45 p.m. Once it closes, there is no more we can do, and whatever rules, legislation and laws they bring in, we will be stuck with. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll do another one again soon.
New UK drone laws are being proposed that target drone users like never before.
Hey guys, quick video to talk a little bit about the new proposed drone rules in the UK. Obviously, I think hobbyists and commercial users are both pretty concerned about this. There's a couple aspects that we find especially concerning. Having to file flight plans a full week in advance will definitely make real-time operations pretty difficult, as well as 300-pound spot fines seem a bit excessive to us. So we'd recommend checking out that government consultation before it's too late. Let your opinion be known, and let's keep this industry progressing forward.
A £300 on-the-spot fine could be issued by the police or even a council warden.
The people that use multi-rotorcraft most don't fill in the consultation. It's not going to work out in our favour. Let's keep this industry growing in the right direction.
A charge up to £45 per annum could be levied for a mandatory flight information and notification system application.
I can't believe they actually say that's moving Britain ahead, because actually I feel that the new drone regulations is actually leaving Britain behind. It's going to affect me, it's going to affect you, it's going to affect many, many people, and if anything I would envisage, I can see if these new proposals go ahead, that will put an awful lot of small businesses like myself out of business.
If we sit back like we normally do here in the UK, we're very relaxed about things like this, then we are going to lose some privileges. And those privileges will be absolutely central to free and enjoyable hobbyist flight in the future, and may also shape the regulations going forward for commercial flying.
Tell the UK government your thoughts before it's too late.